As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." These powerful words spoken by Joshua encapsulate the essence of a man who led Israel from wilderness wanderers to conquerors of Canaan. But who was Joshua, and how did a former slave become God's chosen military leader? Joshua's story begins long before the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. Born into slavery in Egypt, he grew up witnessing the harsh realities of oppression. Little did he know that he was being shaped for a role that would define Israel's future and showcase faithful leadership in action. As a young man, Joshua caught the eye of Moses, the great liberator of Israel. There must have been something special about this youth, a spark of courage, a hint of unwavering faith. Moses saw potential in Joshua, taking him under his wing and grooming him for leadership. Joshua's first major test came early. When Moses sent 12 spies to scout out Canaan, Joshua was among them. While 10 spies cowered at the sight of the land's inhabitants, Joshua and Caleb stood firm in their faith. They trusted in God's promise, demonstrating the kind of covenant fulfillment that would characterize Joshua's entire life. As Moses' right-hand man, Joshua had a front-row seat to some of the most extraordinary events in Israel's history. He witnessed the plagues in Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, and the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. Talk about on-the-job training for divine warfare. Joshua's military prowess first shone through in the battle against the Amalekites. With Moses' arms raised in prayer, Joshua led the Israelite army to victory. It was a taste of the battles to come, a glimpse of how spiritual and physical warfare would intertwine in his future conquests. Throughout the 40 years of wilderness wandering, Joshua remained faithful. While an entire generation fell away, grumbling and rebelling against God, Joshua stood firm. His loyalty to both God and Moses never wavered, setting him apart as a man of integrity and faith. Moses recognized Joshua's potential and began to delegate responsibilities to him. Joshua became the keeper of the tent of meeting, a role that allowed him intimate access to God's presence. It was here, in the quiet moments of divine communion, that Joshua's leadership was truly forged. As the time drew near for Israel to enter the Promised Land, Moses publicly commissioned Joshua as his successor. It was a momentous occasion, a passing of the torch from one great leader to another. The weight of responsibility must have been immense, but Joshua's training had prepared him well. God himself confirmed Joshua's appointment, promising to be with him just as he had been with Moses. This divine affirmation was crucial, bolstering Joshua's confidence and cementing his authority in the eyes of the people. He would need every ounce of that assurance for the challenges ahead. In his final days, Moses imparted his wisdom to Joshua, charging him to be strong and courageous. These words would become Joshua's mantra, a rallying cry that would carry him through the battles and trials to come. With this blessing, Joshua stood poised on the brink of his greatest adventure, ready to lead Israel into the Promised Land. Now, imagine standing on the banks of the Jordan River, swollen with spring floods, knowing you've got to get an entire nation across. That's exactly the situation Joshua faced as he prepared to lead Israel into the Promised Land. Talk about a baptism by fire for a new leader. God's instructions to Joshua were clear but extraordinary. Have the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant into the river, and the waters will part. It was a test of faith that echoed the parting of the Red Sea, a reminder that the same God who delivered them from Egypt was still at work. As the priests' feet touched the water's edge, a miracle unfolded. The raging river stopped flowing, piling up in a heap upstream. It was as if God had pressed a cosmic pause button, creating a dry path for his people to cross. This wasn't just divine warfare, it was divine engineering. Joshua, demonstrating faithful leadership, didn't just stand back and watch. He orchestrated the crossing, ensuring that every tribe made it safely to the other side. It was a logistical feat as much as a spiritual one, moving thousands of people, animals, and possessions across the riverbed. In the midst of the crossing, Joshua had a stone memorial set up in the middle of the river. It was a brilliant move, creating a lasting testament to God's power that would be visible when the waters receded. Talk about thinking ahead. The timing of this miracle was impeccable. It happened during harvest season when the river was at its fullest, making the parting all the more impressive. This wasn't just a trickle of water being held back. It was a flood, magnifying the miracle and boosting the Israelites' faith. As the last Israelites stepped onto Canaan's soil, the priests carrying the ark emerged from the riverbed. The moment their feet touched dry land, the waters came rushing back. It was a dramatic finale to an incredible event, a clear sign of God's precise control over nature. The crossing of the Jordan wasn't just about getting to the other side. It was a powerful statement to the surrounding nations. News of this miracle spread quickly, striking fear into the hearts of Canaan's inhabitants. Joshua's reputation as a leader favored by a powerful God began to grow. For the Israelites, this event was a powerful confirmation of Joshua's leadership. Any doubts they might have had about Moses' successor were washed away with the Jordan's waters. Joshua had successfully led them into the promised land, fulfilling the first part of God's covenant promise. This miraculous crossing set the tone for the conquest to come. It demonstrated that with faith and obedience, the seemingly impossible could be achieved. The Israelites had literally walked into their destiny on dry ground, a powerful metaphor for the covenant fulfillment that was unfolding. The Battle of Jericho stands out as one of the most unconventional military campaigns in history. Picture this: an army's primary weapon is not swords or spears, but trumpets and shouting. It's a strategy that would make any military tactician scratch their head in bewilderment. Joshua's approach to conquering Jericho was a masterclass in blending human obedience with divine warfare. The instructions he received from God were, to put it mildly, unusual. March around the city once a day for 6 days, then 7 times on the 7th day, blow trumpets, shout, and watch the walls fall. It was a plan that required immense faith and precise execution. The psychological impact of this strategy on Jericho's inhabitants must have been intense. Imagine being inside those walls, watching your enemies circle your city day after day in eerie silence. The tension would have been unbearable. It was psychological warfare at its finest, orchestrated by the ultimate strategist. Joshua's faithful leadership shines through in how he communicated God's plan to the people. He didn't question or doubt, even though the strategy defied conventional military wisdom. His confidence in God's plan likely bolstered the Israelites' faith, crucial for the success of this unusual operation. The role of the Ark of the Covenant in this battle plan is significant. Carried by priests and accompanied by armed guards, it represented God's presence among the people. Its prominent place in the procession was a constant reminder that this was God's battle, not just Israel's. On the 7th day, as the Israelites completed their final lap around Jericho, the tension must have been palpable. When Joshua finally gave the command to shout, the sound that erupted wasn't just a battle cry. It was a roar of faith, a declaration of trust in God's promise. And then the miracle. The walls of Jericho, formidable and imposing, simply collapsed. It wasn't a gradual crumbling, but a sudden, dramatic fall. In that moment, the line between the natural and supernatural blurred, showcasing God's power in a tangible, awe-inspiring way. The fall of Jericho wasn't just a military victory, it was a powerful demonstration of covenant fulfillment. God had promised this land to Israel, and the toppling of Jericho's walls was a clear sign that he was making good on his word. In the aftermath, Joshua's command to spare Rahab and her family shows that even in the midst of conquest, there was room for mercy. It's a reminder that divine warfare isn't about blind destruction, but about fulfilling God's larger purposes, which sometimes include unexpected acts of grace. The Battle of Jericho set the tone for the rest of Israel's conquest of Canaan. It established a pattern of reliance on God's guidance and power rather than human strength alone. This victory laid the foundation for how Joshua would approach the challenges ahead, always seeking to align his strategies with God's will. Joshua's unwavering faith and obedience in the face of seemingly impossible challenges is truly inspiring. It's the kind of spiritual strength many of us aspire to in our own lives. If you're looking to develop a deeper, more resilient faith like Joshua's, our ebook, 30 Habits to Draw Closer to God, might be just what you need. It offers practical steps to build the kind of trust and obedience that made Joshua such an effective leader. But for now, let's continue our exploration of Joshua's remarkable journey and see how he faced the ongoing challenges of conquering Canaan. After Jericho, Joshua led the Israelites in a series of campaigns that would make any military historian sit up and take notice. These weren't just battles, they were lessons in divine warfare, each victory a step towards covenant fulfillment. The Battle of Ai stands out as a sobering reminder that even God's chosen leaders can stumble. After an initial defeat due to disobedience in the ranks, Joshua regrouped, sought God's guidance, and ultimately emerged victorious. It's a powerful example of how setbacks can be turned into comebacks with the right approach. One of the most dramatic moments in Joshua's conquest was the day the sun stood still. During a crucial battle against a coalition of Amorite kings, Joshua boldly asked God to make the sun and moon stop in their tracks. And believe it or not, that's exactly what happened. Talk about having time on your side. The conquest of Canaan wasn't a walk in the park. Joshua faced formidable enemies with advanced weaponry and fortified cities. Yet time and again, through a combination of clever strategy and divine intervention, he prevailed. It was as if he had a heavenly war room at his disposal. One of Joshua's most cunning victories came through diplomacy rather than direct combat. The Gibeonites, fearing destruction, tricked Joshua into making a peace treaty with them. While it caused some complications later, it shows that Joshua's leadership involved more than just military prowess. The battle against the 5 kings of the Amorites showcases Joshua's tactical genius. Marching his army through the night to catch the enemy by surprise, he then called on God to aid in the fight with hailstones. It was a perfect blend of human effort and divine assistance. Joshua's northern campaign was a masterclass in swift, decisive action. In a series of rapid-fire battles, he defeated a powerful coalition led by King Jabin of Hazor. This campaign effectively broke the back of Canaanite resistance in the north, paving the way for Israelite settlement. Throughout these conquests, Joshua demonstrated faithful leadership by consistently seeking God's guidance and following his instructions to the letter. Whether it was destroying captured chariots or burning conquered cities, Joshua's obedience was unwavering. The battles weren't just about conquest, they were about fulfilling God's promise to Abraham. Each victory was a step towards claiming the land God had sworn to give Israel. It was divine warfare with a purpose, not mere territorial expansion. By the end of his military campaigns, Joshua had effectively subdued the majority of Canaan. While pockets of resistance remained, the major opposition had been overcome. It was an impressive feat of leadership, strategy, and faith that set the stage for Israel's settlement in their promised land. Joshua's leadership style was a unique blend of military prowess and spiritual sensitivity. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was a man who understood that true victory came from aligning with God's will. This combination of strength and humility made him an exemplar of faithful leadership. One of Joshua's most striking qualities was his unwavering obedience to God's commands. Whether it was the unusual battle strategy for Jericho or the directive to circumcise all the men before entering Canaan, Joshua followed through without question. This obedience wasn't blind, it was rooted in a deep trust in God's wisdom. Joshua's spiritual integrity shone through in his consistent practice of seeking God's guidance. Before major decisions or battles, he would consult with the Lord, often through the high priest and the Urim and Thummim. This habit of divine consultation set a powerful example for the entire nation. As a leader, Joshua wasn't afraid to delegate. He appointed officers, sent out spies, and assigned tasks to different tribes. Yet he also knew when to take charge personally, often leading from the front in battles. This balance of empowerment and personal involvement marked him as a skilled administrator. Joshua's handling of crises revealed his leadership mettle. When faced with defeat at Ai due to Achan's sin, Joshua didn't blame others or make excuses. Instead, he fell on his face before God, seeking answers and direction. This humility in the face of setbacks was a key aspect of his leadership style. One of the most remarkable aspects of Joshua's leadership was his commitment to covenant fulfillment. He understood that the conquest of Canaan wasn't just about military victories, but about fulfilling God's promises to Israel. This perspective gave a higher purpose to all his actions. Joshua's integrity was perhaps most evident in his personal life. Unlike many leaders who succumb to the temptations of power, there's no record of Joshua ever compromising his faith or moral standards. He remained faithful to God and to his calling throughout his life. As a communicator, Joshua knew the power of words to inspire and motivate. His speeches, particularly his final address to the Israelites, were filled with reminders of God's faithfulness and calls to continued obedience. He understood that leadership wasn't just about action, but also about inspiration. Joshua's leadership style included a strong emphasis on memory and tradition. He set up stone memorials, wrote down God's laws, and constantly reminded the people of their history. This focus on remembering God's works helped solidify Israel's faith and national identity. Perhaps most importantly, Joshua led by example. His famous declaration, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," wasn't just rhetoric. It was a lived reality that gave weight to all his words and actions. In Joshua, Israel had a leader whose life was a testament to the power of wholehearted devotion to God. After the dust of conquest had settled, Joshua faced a new challenge, dividing the promised land among the tribes of Israel. This wasn't just a matter of drawing lines on a map. It was about fulfilling God's promises and setting the stage for Israel's future. Talk about a high-stakes real estate deal. The process of land division was a mix of divine guidance and practical considerations. Joshua used the method of casting lots, a practice believed to reveal God's will. It was a way of ensuring that the distribution was fair and guided by divine wisdom rather than human preference. The tribal allotments weren't just random parcels of land. Each area had its own characteristics, from the fertile valleys of Ephraim to the rugged hill country of Judah. It was as if God had prepared a diverse landscape to match the unique qualities of each tribe. Joshua's role in this process demonstrated his faithful leadership. He didn't claim the best portions for himself or play favorites. Instead, he ensured that each tribe received its due according to the promises made by Moses and the guidance of God. The division of land wasn't without its challenges. The daughters of Zelophehad, for instance, approached Joshua to claim their father's inheritance. Joshua's fair and forward-thinking decision in their favor showed his commitment to justice and his willingness to adapt traditional practices when necessary. One of the most significant aspects of the land division was the fulfillment of the promise to Caleb. This old warrior, who had stood with Joshua against the doubting spies decades earlier, received the land he had been promised. It was a powerful moment of covenant fulfillment, showing that God remembers and rewards faithfulness. The allocation of cities of refuge was another crucial part of the land division. These cities, strategically placed throughout the territory, were safe havens for those who had accidentally caused a death. It was a forward-thinking system of justice that balanced accountability with mercy. Joshua also oversaw the designation of Levitical cities. Since the tribe of Levi didn't receive a territorial inheritance, they were given cities scattered throughout the other tribes' lands. This arrangement ensured that spiritual leadership was distributed across the nation. The division of land east of the Jordan River presented unique challenges. The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh had already received their inheritance, but Joshua had to ensure they fulfilled their commitment to help the other tribes conquer their lands before settling down. Throughout this complex process, Joshua maintained a focus on the bigger picture. The land division wasn't just about property rights, it was about setting up a nation that would be a light to the world. Each tribal allotment was a piece of a larger mosaic, a part of God's plan for His chosen people. As Joshua neared the end of his life, he gathered the Israelites for one last pep talk. But this wasn't your average farewell speech. It was a powerful call to covenant fulfillment, a reminder of God's faithfulness, and a challenge to future generations. In his address, Joshua took the Israelites on a walk down memory lane. He recounted their history from Abraham to their present day, highlighting God's intervention at every turn. It was like a greatest hits compilation of divine warfare, reminding the people of the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. Joshua didn't pull any punches in his speech. He laid out a clear choice for the people: serve the Lord or serve other gods. His famous declaration, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," wasn't just a personal statement. It was a challenge to every family in Israel to make a conscious decision about their allegiance. The legacy of Joshua's faithful leadership shines through in this final address. He wasn't concerned with building monuments to himself or securing his place in history. His focus was entirely on ensuring that the next generation would remain faithful to God. Talk about having your priorities straight. Joshua's foresight is evident in his warnings about the consequences of turning away from God. He understood that the real battles Israel would face weren't just against external enemies, but against the temptation to abandon their covenant with God. It was a prophetic glimpse into the challenges that lay ahead. In a powerful symbolic act, Joshua set up a large stone as a witness to the people's commitment to serve God. This wasn't just interior decoration, it was a physical reminder of the covenant they had renewed. Joshua knew the power of visual aids in keeping people on track spiritually. The response of the people to Joshua's challenge is telling. They enthusiastically declared their intention to serve God, echoing Joshua's commitment. It was a moment of national unity and purpose, a high point in Israel's spiritual history that would be remembered for generations. Joshua's final act of leadership was to write these words in the book of the law of God. He understood the importance of recording these commitments for future generations. It was a way of extending his influence beyond his lifetime, ensuring that his message would continue to guide the nation. The biblical account notes that Israel served the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime and the lifetime of the elders who outlived him. This is perhaps the greatest testament to Joshua's leadership, that he left behind a legacy of faithfulness that continued after he was gone. Joshua's death and burial are recorded simply, without fanfare. Yet the impact of his life was anything but simple. He left behind a nation settled in its promised land, a people committed to their God, and a model of leadership that would inspire generations to come. Not bad for a guy who started out as a slave in Egypt. As we wrap up our exploration of Joshua's extraordinary life, let's consider how his example can shape our own faith journeys. Joshua's unwavering commitment to God, his courage in the face of insurmountable odds, and his faithful leadership offer timeless lessons for us today. Ask yourself, where in your life do you need to exercise the kind of faith Joshua demonstrated? Are there walls of Jericho in your life that seem impossible to overcome? Remember, with God, the impossible becomes possible. Now here's a challenge for you. In the comments below, share one area of your life where you're inspired to take a bold stand for God, just as Joshua did. Your insight could be the encouragement someone else needs to step out in faith. Speaking of faith journeys, do you sometimes feel like you're wandering in a spiritual wilderness? You're not alone. Many believers struggle to maintain a vibrant faith amidst life's daily challenges. But here's some good news. The solution might be simpler than you think. In the comments, you'll find our ebook, 30 Habits to Draw Closer to God. This isn't just another self-help guide. It's a practical roadmap inspired by spiritual giants like Joshua, designed to help you forge a meaningful, lasting connection with God. Imagine transforming your daily routine into a powerful tool for spiritual growth. Picture the peace and fulfillment of living each day in alignment with God's will, just as Joshua did. This ebook offers a clear, accessible path to renew your faith and find purpose in a world that often feels chaotic. The spiritual transformation you're seeking is within reach. Check out 30 Habits to Draw Closer to God now in the comments and embark on your journey toward a deeper, more vibrant relationship with God. Remember, a fulfilling spiritual life isn't a distant dream. It's a reality waiting for you to embrace. Don't miss out on more inspiring biblical character studies like this. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated on our latest videos. And hey, why keep this inspiration to yourself? Share this video with someone who could use a dose of Joshua's courage and faith in their life. Until next time, remember Joshua's powerful declaration. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Let's make that our own battle cry as we face life's challenges. Keep standing firm, keep trusting in God's promises, and watch as He works wonders in your life.